Hello and welcome back to another episode of Star Wars Alliance. Of course, I'm your host Clay, and with me, with all the liquids inside of her house, to make sure that she is actually able to speak to us tonight, is Katie. Katie, I know you're feeling a little under the weather, so I thank you for being here tonight. But how are you?
I it's not bad. Y'all, the last time I had COVID was bad to the point I fainted. So we're gonna hope to not get there, and we're gonna hope to knock things out ahead of schedule. I did have a negative test, but we're not counting our chickens before they're hatched. So, yeah, we got a lot of good stuff to talk about today. I'm super excited. Um, yeah, if and I think the theme of today's episode, y'all, is that you can still be a fan of a franchise and not like everything in it. Just keep that in mind for later on. It's our motto here at Star Wars Alliance, and we're going to talk about listener feedback later, which kind of applies to this. So,
Yes, yes, indeed. But we have a very, very hefty show tonight. We have some, of course, Star Wars news in regards to that of the Mandalorian, some High Republic stuff. Of course, as our background here on YouTube shows, we are going to be reviewing the Bad Batch episode 10. We have what, 6 episodes left after this? Um,
it's correct.
and then after that, again, like Katie said, we're going to have some listener feedback and questions. And for our post credits, we're going to steal a book out of Marvel Alliance's, or steal a page out of Marvel Alliance's book, do a post credits with this episode, and do a review of Star Wars Jedi Battle Scars. We did receive that book early, and we were able to finish it. And I think we have some words to say about that book. So, like I said, very hefty episode. Let's go ahead and get started with it. Katie, where do you want to jump on? Do you want to go kind of in the order of which we kind of got everything? Because if that is the case, then I think the first news would be Tales from the Death Star, correct?
Yes. So this is another Dark Horse production. Um, and it is by the one and only Cap Scott. He has been doing the Halloween episodes of comics in the all ages section. I think this will be his fifth year doing it actually. So that is supposed to be coming this October, and it's Tales from the Death Star. So very excited to see them continue to branch out away from Vader's Castle, because that's what it was at IDW, is Tales from Vader's Castle. So it'll be interesting to see how everything goes.
Yes, and also, just real quick, I totally forgot to just throw this out there. I have no idea if you did. I kind of zoned out for a second. But all of our GUA paperwork, of course, we are part of the GUA, Geek Ultimate Alliance Network. We have several shows that go live, that being us, Star Wars Alliance, DC Alliance, and Marvel Alliance. All of our information is going to be down below. So if you would like to look at the schedule, it will be down below. Anything specific, if you're listening to this when this drops, it is Thursday. Tomorrow, Friday, is going to be uh our live show with the G-Way crossover. So we will be doing that. But also want to give a shout out to our boy Joe doing the hardest work with The Last of Us. And I say hardest work, it's just he all of our schedules are so out of whack, and him finding guests on that is probably the hardest thing. But I listened to his coverage of the latest episode of The Last of Us. Really good stuff. Just wanted to shout that out. Go listen to it. Go watch the show and then go listen to it. But yeah, just wanted to throw that out there. But yeah, as far as the tales from the Death Star, these are always really, really fun. The covers for these books, this is usually, from what I can remember, um, before it switched, was an IDW imprint. With it now having Dark Horse, I think that's going to be very, very fun. the covers for the kind of Halloween-esque Star Wars books are always, for some reason, very sought after. So if you guys want this, of course, make sure to go to your local comic book shop. Make sure you pre-order. Make sure you're on top of that in order to get those books. But speaking of books, we have more news on the High Republic, The Edge of Balance, Volume 3. Now, this is going to be the final story of Phase 2.
Supposedly, and we're gonna talk about this, but go ahead and show the cover.
Yeah, yeah, it is supposedly the final where is see this new thing with StreamYard is so weird when you're sharing, especially when you have two monitors. But this is called the Edge of Balance Precedent. We have I can't remember. I watched the video on this one. I can't remember who this Wookiee is. I can't remember his name.
I am dropping it. I even had it like in my head ready to go, y'all. So I'm sorry. But this is the Jedi in the first two's master. And it is a Wookiee. It's got and sorry y'all, my brain is like um but the This Week in Star Wars video has a lot of good descriptions on it. It tells you even who the um multiple armed person is below the Jedi Master. And the Wookiee is, for those who aren't watching, the Wookiee is like screaming, kind of almost like in like a fighting stance. But it does pick up after the Battle of Jeddah. And so I'd imagine it's why we're seeing the Nihil in phase one trying to attack this planet and doing all the things. So
Now, I am trying to be clever and do a very quick Google search of who
Mhm.
the Wookiee is in the Edge of Balance, and no one is giving me this. Oh, Master Arkoff.
Yes.
So it's Master Arkoff's master? Is that what you were saying?
No, so Master Arkoff is the Japanese looking Jedis with the weird lightsaber handles. Can't remember her name. Lily. Is it Lily?
Yes.
Yeah. That was the Jedi I was talking about.
Oh, so this is Master Arkoff.
Yeah.
Oh, you know what? That would make sense
Didn't you just say
because
that?
well, no, no. I thought you had said this was the master's master. So
Oh
I
no.
got confused. So this is Master Arkoff. So that's pretty
Yes.
cool. Really excited about that. Um, Master Arkoff was uh a man of not many words in Edge of Balance. It was more of like implied stuff, but really liked his design as a Jedi. So I am really interested to see how they're going to make him a lead in this phase two. Uh it's so weird because it's volume 3, so it's
Mhm.
progressing the number of trades, but it's set in the past. So my
Yeah.
brain cannot process that sometimes. But this, I love this cover. I'm really excited to see what all that entails. Now, you said that it was not kind of the last story. What do you mean by that? Like, what do you mean that we're going to talk a little bit more about that?
So so Dark Horse, and this is a thing that's happening quite frequently with just comics in general. Dark Horse is having trouble with their printers, so comics continue to be delayed. Now this is set for release, I believe, May 2nd. um and currently the Nameless Terror, which is the graphic novel for phase 2 of the High Republic, the Nameless Terror was supposed to drop its first episode, I believe, in December, and it just dropped its first issue today. The second issue has been delayed, I believe, to March 26th. And then the last two issues are supposed to come out 2 weeks apart in April. I don't think it's going to make that date with how much these keep getting pushed back.
Yeah.
Um, so it'll be interesting to see, but I don't think this is going to be um I don't think this is going to be the last story because of that reason. And maybe they'll choose to delay the manga. Who knows?
Maybe. Um, I would be very interested to see kind of that decision making. We have seen before that I believe it was the end of phase one. Um, it was the end of phase one, wave two, I believe, with the mission. Is it Mission to Disaster? No, that's the first one.
Yeah, Mission to Disaster was the this one, I think.
I can't
Zoom in on my
remember.
bookshelf.
There was
Yeah,
uh
Mission to Disaster.
it was Mission to Disaster, which was in wave two. That one was
It was
delayed.
wave 3.
It was wave three, excuse me, sorry. It was delayed, but somehow it didn't mess with the release order, because remember, I did ask Charles Soule at one point, because of that delay, there was supposed to be within a week of each other, uh, Fallen Star as well.
Yep.
And so I had asked him, okay, is it release order? Is it publishing? Like, what exactly order do we read? And he said, you should read it in the order that they are released. So I'm hoping that the story, and I think with Edge of Balance, we have really kind of seen how it plays this weird, like, uh non-linear type of
Yeah.
plot story within the High Republic story overall, because we've gotten little tidbits from Edge of Balance that we've seen the repercussions from, like later down in within the quote unquote years of the High Republic.
Yeah.
So I think regardless of how this third volume releases, I think it'll still play that kind of part within this phase. So I don't think it should be too big of a problem.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. I'm just worried with how much it sounds like things are being attached to the Battle of Jeddah because this is supposed to pick up right after that, I think. Or was it okay, wait. Anyways, I just worry with how much timelines are going to kind of work because we've seen in the comics where we're getting more information, but it also feels like, okay, is that coming at the right time?
Well, it's funny that you bring that up. This wasn't part of our news segment, but I was scrolling through our Star Wars Alliance chat and I just remembered something that you posted in that chat. Some random individual said it's happened, that the High Republic now fills an entire shelf, and they did hashtag the Battle of Jeddah. And this individual, I'm trying to see who this is. Creative director of
So
Lucasfilm Publishing, New Yorker. So this is Michael
Siglain.
Siglain. Okay, so
Yep.
Michael Siglain, creative director of Lucasfilm Publishing, states, "Awesome. Thanks so much for reading." And in parentheses, he says, "Also, given what we've got planned, you're gonna need another shelf." So this from what, and I see this, okay, this picture confuses the hell out of me, because I have sat here with my wife and I have said, "What should I put in the order of the High Republic?" And I explained to her, "Okay, phase 2 is technically a prequel to phase 1, but it's releasing after phase 1." And so she said, "Oh, just put it after. I think it still makes sense because otherwise they wouldn't have made it that way." And I was like, "Fine, I'll do it." This picture, they're making it basically how you would like the Skywalker saga with episode one, two,
Timeline.
three timeline. Exactly. How do you have it?
Timeline.
You have it.
I'm big into
I need to change my shelf. Like all
I'm big
this,
into timelines. Okay.
this is all phase one, and then second shelf is all phase two. So I need to change that. I need to change it. It's making me sick to my stomach. Um,
I'll send you a picture of my shelf because I put all the omnibuses and everything up. So my entire shelf is now chronologically accurate.
awesome.
Uh,
But how do you feel? So for one, I was because we are going to be talking, like I said, in our post credits, for a book that is not High Republic. What would you consider those? Would you consider everything that is not High Republic Skywalker Saga?
I think it differs because like they've started doing this where like Battle Scars, for instance, has Star Wars Jedi Battle Scars. So it's not Star Wars Battle Scars, it's Star Wars Jedi, which is the series of the video game. Video games are all Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, Jedi Survivor, and this one's Jedi Battle Scars. So I think it's just kind of a subcategory. I wouldn't say everything else is Skywalker Saga. Everything takes place within the Skywalker Saga.
And that's what I mean because like the High Republic, I feel like is a I wouldn't call it a subcategory. Like I feel like because isn't well maybe it is. Would the Skywalker Saga be considered a subcategory of Star Wars?
I would say so.
Yeah, so it's
And
High Republic and then the Skywalker Saga. Like that's what I feel like.
but like you have Dooku Fallen Order, right? Dooku Fallen or oh my gosh, Dooku Fallen Order. Y'all, my brain is apparently like fuck
Dooku
you.
Dooku Jedi
Dooku Jedi
Lost.
Lost. Most of that actually doesn't take place in the Skywalker saga. It's all a prequel. So would you consider that Skywalker saga?
But it's connected it those dots connect directly to the Skywalker Saga, to his plots within the uh the Clone Wars and all of that. So I think
So
it does.
Padawan takes place in the Skywalker saga?
Yeah,
Interesting.
that's what I assumed. Like that's I don't know. I feel like with the all the heroes and characters that are so connected to the Skywalker family in the Skywalker saga, I assume that they would be in the Skywalker saga. Same thing with Ahsoka, same thing with the Padme trilogy, same with uh uh those are a little bit obvious. But like trying to think of something. Ah, I just hit my mic. Um, yeah, like I feel like all those would be in Skywalker Saga.
Interesting. Y'all let us know on Twitter or email or our phone number
Yes,
magically pops across the board because
yes.
I don't know the number.
Let me grab that real quick. Of course, the Star Wars Alliance hotline 1-830-538-4828. Remember, you can always call and or text, leave a voicemail. Uh, tell us who you are. Don't have to give us all of your information, but just so we can give you a shout out in the next episode. But uh,
I did have one more question.
okay.
Are you reading the High Republic comic right now?
I am. I'm a little bit behind. Um, I will admit, uh, I wanted to put all of my focus on the book that we are reviewing tonight, and due to this is a minor spoiler to my thoughts on that. Due to the lack of reading that, I've kind of did the lack of reading everything else. Um, so I'm catching up on all of my comics this next week and the beginning of March. So I think I'm one or two behind on the High Republic comic, which that will go into some of our questions tonight as well.
Yes. So I think you'll be fine for this thing because you've had a little bit of everything. So you should be fine. But Padawan's THR, and I'm shouting them out. I don't think they listen to this, but read this and I was like, I had the same train of thought. So they had a revelation about the Phase 2 comics, and they said, it's making me fucking sick. So at the end of Midnight Horizon, Yoda comes back, and this person
Yes.
has bandages on their arms. And Phase 2 is supposed to be giving us context about the Leveler and the origin of the Nihil, because in Phase 2 they either don't have that knowledge or it was scrubbed from the archives. Originally, I thought the Phase 2 stories were just to tell us, the audience, the backstory, and when we return to, quote, the present in Phase 3, we'll know more than the Phase 1 characters. But what if these stories are being told to us and the Phase 1 characters? You think about it, you have Porter Engle alive in Phase 1 in the Blade. Sav in the High Republic Adventures is alive. Arkoff in Edge of Balance is alive. The Marvel High Republic one doesn't have an obvious one, but Tay's narration, because he's the one narrating the comic, is in the past tense.
Mm-hmm.
And he's recounting things he didn't personally see, like the start of the riots in the Battle of Jeddah. Even if Maddie and Vildar survive past 10, they won't live till Phase 1. But maybe somebody could. We don't know how long Sephi, the species that Tay is, live. So we don't know if the Nameless Terror will have anybody who survives till Phase 1. But it is a story being told by Phase 1 character Ty.
Mm-hmm.
So there's your connection there. The Jedi in Phase 1 don't have info on the Leveler because of scrubbed archives, and many who encountered it died. But what they do have are these stories. If they all get together, they could piece together the mystery of the Levelers and Planet X and finally overcome. And we don't have all of Phase 2 yet. We know that at least one Leveler is hidden away and the rod is split apart. Somebody alive in Phase 2 has to know how that happened. The note that Dr. Uttersound has in Trail of Shadows, we still don't know who wrote it, except for they were a former Jedi.
Mm-hmm.
And the last thing they had, so far it seems like adult novels are the exception to this, but the young adults and middle grade books are definitely a different story. We don't know if anybody from these stories will live to Phase 1. Maybe these will be stories that the readers get, but the Phase 1 characters do not. Kaz's writing point of view is what makes this extra intriguing, though. My argument for the adult books is you have Yaddle and you have Yoda.
Mm-hmm.
And we know Yoda is a character involved in Phase 1. What
Yeah.
are your thoughts on this?
It was a conundrum. It took me a while to understand their thought process. I had to read this several times to really recollect everything that they were trying to put down. Um, I like this theory, but I think it's too intricate for the writers' room of the High Republic to be like, hey, let's really put this down on paper, right? And if it does, like, if that's the end revelation of the High Republic, you're like, oh, my brain freaking explodes, you know? But
But my argument to that is they've been weaving in High Republic references
to
since
the others,
before this was even a thing. Kylo Ren, the Rise of Kylo Ren has Avar Kriss.
yeah, yeah. But okay, so who wrote the Rise of Kylo Ren?
Charles Soule.
There you go. Like that is I feel like that is kind of like a little bit of a cop out in the sense of like he he's the one that I don't know if he pitched the High Republic. I can't remember like that story at all. But he was the one that helmed the start of it. The Light of the Jedi. Like
Yeah.
I think that this was an opportunity for him to just be like, I'm gonna put all these Easter eggs in here, and then people will connect the dots and be like, "Oh my
But
god!"
there's Easter eggs in Alyssa Wong's Dr. Aphra. I just started her I'm sorry, their Dr. Aphra run. And there's 2 High Republic references in the first volume.
And when did that one start? 2000
2020.
2020. Still, you're right there on the cusp of like when things are starting to be planned out. Like I think that everybody within, because that's what we've come to learn, especially me. I've come to learn that although some people may not see the comics and books as canon, Lucasfilm treats everything as canon other than the Legends books. So
Mhm.
like they and we've heard about these individuals that are like the archivists of Star Wars canon. They're allowed to tell people, no, you can't do that because this happened in this episode of this show, or this happened in this comic on this issue, and whatever. Like I think that you're going to see these little sprinkles of things all over the place, because within the Lucasfilm publishing Star Wars comic friends list group chat, everybody talks. And it's like, hey, this is what's going to happen in the next few years. So, sprinkle what you can. You're allowed to do this. You're allowed not to do that. I think that you're going to see some of that stuff. Now, again, I would love to be proven wrong. And I would love for them to be like, no, Clay, we had this planned all along. And then boom, like just like show up on a big screen, freaking High Republic movie with all the references and everything. I think it would be it would be great. It would be awesome. But I'm not entirely too sure.
Well, we're gonna agree to disagree.
But you know, just to make this episode longer, you brought up something that was, I think, not really noteworthy, because I also think it's just an actor being a snob, a film snob. Um, but Liam Neeson says that there's so many spin-offs, it's diluting it to me, it being Star Wars, and it's taken me away from the mystery and the magic in a weird way. Katie, I need to know.
Liam Neeson, I love you. I loved the Taken movies despite what everybody else said. You're wrong here. You're wrong. Sometimes a mystery is a good mystery, but sometimes you just want to know there's more to the story. And that's what we're getting here.
And
So,
and that was
fuck you.
also something. So I shared this in the Geekverse Discord. If you would like to join, make sure to, on the YouTube channel here, there should be a link down below, or on any other of the videos. Go check it out. Or if you would like to join, you can just DM me and I can send you an invite also. Um, but I put this in the Geekverse Discord. We had a small discussion about it, and everybody's like, "What spin-offs is he talking about? What do you mean so many spin-offs? There's hardly any movies anymore." And I think that in the kind of way that Liam Neeson is probably looking at it, in a way that is like, of course, the same way that the general audience sees it. Oh, there's no lightsabers. You're ruining Star Wars, you know?
Yeah.
And I don't see why Neeson would think in that way. But again, rich film snob, you never know, right? So, Liam Neeson, we disagree hard with your statement there. But going back to our original plans for what to talk about, we talked a lot about the High Republic stuff, but we have also here the uh, Lego set for the High Republic
Yep.
was teased. It wasn't necessarily officially announced, I don't believe. Um, but it is the first High Republic Lego set, if they decide to make more, is set to be $39.99, ages 4 and up, with 124 pieces. Now, we have both played the Lego Skywalker Saga. I have told Abby that as soon, and guys, I don't need another hobby, but this is something that I've always wanted. I have always wanted a Lego room, just like to legitimately be able to purchase the like large sets, and like super glue them so that way they can never break after actually like completing them, and just making an amazing Lego room. Um, I kind of want to start with this one.
I am almost very tempted by this. I'm not typically a Lego person, but I want to support the High Republic anywhere I can. So I think this is a great move for them. I think it's a great way to kind of get kids more involved with the characters and everything. Obviously, this is just kind of a general announcement. But all of Twitter basically lost their minds with this and was like immediate buy. Like I don't even have to see it. Immediate purchase. Like
Yeah.
so this is gonna go quick, y'all.
um but I think that is it for our High Republic section of the news, looking at everything
Yeah.
else. But we do have some news on the Mandalorian. We got some awesome looking posters, which I absolutely love. But some big words from Favreau here. In regards to season 4, he says, "Yeah, I've written it already. We have to know where we're going to tell a fully formed story. So we mapped it out." Uh, Dave and I, being, of course, Filoni. So, Katie, I am so upset about this. And the reason why is they can sit down and map out several seasons of The Mandalorian, but they can't sit down and map out several movies of Star Wars. What is going
Favreau
on?
I don't think Favreau wants to do
Well,
movies.
no, not
So
not not necessarily, just not necessarily Favreau and Filoni. I'm just saying in general, like Star Wars has found two people to map out their story within a Disney Plus show. Why can't they find people to map out a story within their film franchise? Like I don't know why it's so hard for this to happen.
so here's my theory, right? I think it's not a matter of they haven't mapped things out. I think it's a matter of they're picky people, and I'm glad they're being picky people to an extent. So I think they just are trying to find the right people for the right job. And that's what we run into with pickiness, right? Is things take quite some time. So
True, true. I just like when he said that, I'm like, good. That is good that they're mapping it out. There won't be, hopefully, any continuity errors within seasons 3 and 4. This kind of goes into what we talked about with, will the Mandalorian meet with the skeleton crew? Well,
yeah.
of course, because he's already written it. He's already planning it. Um, and I just like, man, I just need more of this kind of partnership everywhere else within Star Wars. Uh, but yeah, I'm happy that season 4 is already being uh moving forward. Um, really excited. We are now, let's see here. It is the 22nd by the time we are recording this. We are exactly 1 week away from season 3.
Yes. Also, y'all, just like somebody tell Matt happy birthday. It's Matt's birthday right now. So
Oh,
if you're
happy
listening to
birthday,
this,
Matt.
tell him happy birthday.
See, at
He's not gonna
least
listen to this, but
I was about to say, at least your spouse listens to your podcast. Abby has told me. Abby has told me I started listening and then I got bored, so I turned it off. And I'm just like, and it's more so because she does not understand anything that we talk about, whether it
yeah,
be me here on Star Wars Alliance, me on Ranger Alliance, or my other show. She's just like, it's not her stuff. So she wants to
yeah.
support, and she supports it as much as she can withstand. And then she's like, yeah, no. So, Abby,
My
I
mom,
love you, but you know,
how is she doing, by the way?
she is doing good. That is something I forgot to mention. Yes, my wife had her gallbladder removed. Absolutely terrifying in the moments of how that all went about. but she is doing better. She has all of her medication. Baby is doing good. Baby is Amberlyn is actually at my grandmother's house right now, which is literally 10 steps outside of my front door. So I'm gonna go grab her as soon as we're done here. But yes, Abby is doing great. She is on a good path of recovery.
Tell her if she has questions, just let me know because I had mine out when I was 21. So
That is insane. Like, just like, well, you probably had it, and I don't want to get into the nitty gritty because it can get kind of gross. Like, for the fact that the doctor looked at me straight in the face and was like, "Do you want pictures?" And I was like, "Of the gallbladder? Frick yeah!" Like, I was like, "Yeah, that's gonna be awesome." Um, and like the first thing he came into the room and gave me the photo. Like, it wasn't the priority to tell me if she was okay. He was just like, "Here's your photo. Oh, and your wife is doing fine." I was like, "Oh, okay, cool." But yeah, weird experience, witnessing everything.
So there is $25 worth of comics coming out next week. In case you weren't already wanting to dive into Star Wars next week with Mando and the Bad Batch, you can read Han and Solo Chewbacca number 10 out of 10, which by the way, I'm very glad this one is over with. I have not liked this series whatsoever. Anyways, Hidden Empire.
The Han Solo Chewbacca you haven't been liking at all?
Yeah, I haven't liked that one.
I liked a few issues, but I mean, it was I feel like there's like a quota for like Han and Chewie stories, I feel like in comics, and
Yeah,
they're just like, yeah, just throw this one out there.
yeah. Um, Hidden Empire 4 out of 5 is out next week. Hyperspace Stories. So the first two were Marvel. This one's Dark Horse. 4 out of 12 for that one. Star Wars number 32. So we're back to Marvel. The Blade 3 out of 4. And The Mandalorian 8 out of 8. I'm gonna be honest. I have not read a single issue of The Mandalorian. Okay, I lied. I read the first one and it was like identical to the episode.
Yes, so I don't know if you knew this or not,
Yes.
but all of the sequel series of Star Wars all had a comic book adaptation. The only one that has not finished, and it has been, I think, just like kaput, they're never going to finish it, is
Rise of Skywalker.
the Rise of Skywalker. Um, and they are basically like verbatim, almost even word for word, um, a direct adaptation. So that's why I haven't really been interested in buying or reading The Mandalorian. Um, I will be honest though, if there's ever a possibility of meeting any of the artists for the book, I might pick it up then and then have like a signature. But otherwise, I'm not going to be picking that one up. Right now, my two out of this entire list, like top two, is Star Wars and The Blade right now. Third would be Hidden Empire. I do need to catch up on it. But that is my list out of all of these.
For Hidden Empire, I'm really trying to figure out how they're gonna finish this in 2 issues because I don't see it happening. Blade has been awesome. Um, and I have to read the latest issue for Star Wars, but I've enjoyed kind of like the High Republic delve in that they're doing right
Mhm.
now, with No Space. So yeah, but those are ones that you can check out next week. And my main point, I guess, with Mandalorian, and I brought this up originally, if they're gonna be direct adaptations, I wish they bring in like a person of color or a female writer instead of just handing it off to somebody else, like another male writer. So that's
Yeah.
my biggest gripe with that. Is that I think that was another opportunity to just bring somebody else in, new to Star Wars and kind of let them get their feet wet. And anyways,
I think that that would be a smart idea. I mean, especially, relating it to that of DC and the Milestone initiative. Of course, Milestone is a person of color like led imprint at DC,
yeah.
and the initiative was to get new writers of color out into the field of comics. I think that with the special kind of situation of adaptations that have been like The Mandalorian or the movies, you're kind of in a more stricter type of script. So you know a certain path, you know how you know your destination, and so you can kind of, like you said, just get your feet wet to see if this is something for you. I think that would be very, very cool, actually.
Yeah.
But our next piece of news is that the next Star Wars celebration, Katie, you can finally save up for the next one, because it is not until 2025. They're actually skipping 2024. Now, I am not a super expert at Star Wars Celebration. Was there always gaps between like every other, or is this the first time that they're actually taking a break for a while?
So I believe in the past, like obviously you have the pandemic and breaks happened there, but I think they did go like to a point where it was like every other year or like every 2 years, especially like before Disney. Um, but I think this is like the first time they're taking like a true break. Um, in yeah, since Disney got it. But I really like this idea. I think especially after going to Europe, I think it's a good idea. 2024, we don't think there's a whole lot for Star Wars television coming. Really, you have the Acolyte, you have Andor, and maybe Star Wars Vision season 3, and
Yeah,
maybe Bad Batch season 3. And right now, that's going to be about it, unless you get Mandalorian season 4 like in production right now or something. I don't know. Um, so I think this is smart. Plus, you're looking at potentially having a movie in 2025.
I was gonna say I
Um,
like the person that posted this said two things that I thought were very cheeky and kind of funny. Says low key feels like confirmation that we're getting a movie that year. And then also that it is the Revenge of the Sith 20th anniversary
yeah,
will be that year as well. So I think that is pretty cool.
yeah. And then the last piece of news that we have is the runtime for The Mandalorian season 3, episode 1. Anybody want to take a guess? Over or under 40 minutes? All right,
Katie,
I'm
this
going to give you 5 seconds for the listeners to take your guess. Five, four, three, two, one. It is 35 minutes and 16 seconds.
this is so disappointing.
Yes.
We have had a not really a bigger conversation about this in the G-Way chat, but we've mentioned that every single Disney Plus show, for some reason, does not take the advantage of being in people's homes and not having to worry about other movies and shows or whatever within a theater where you have to have specific times in order to buy more seats and all of this other stuff. You're at people's houses already. Like, make these episodes longer. Like, now again, I'm not saying that you need to make it longer, therefore making like filler episodes and things like that. No, that's not what I want. I think you could tell a broader story, but stay within your main line with a longer set of episodes, you know?
Yeah. I 100% agree with this. I think Andor took a great advantage of having episodes of varied length. It really played to the advantage of the story being told. I'm really terrified if this is going to be a glorified cameo show like season 2 was. Again, if this is what's going to happen and this is just a, oh yeah, we're introducing all these people. So, I really hope not.
Uh, I could see it, but I don't know. Well, it kind of feels like that already, just in the sense of like we know that uh of course there's going to be this overarching thing with Mandalore. Uh but I feel like they're going to plant seeds because, like Favreau said, seasons 4 is already written. So I do think that they may like just in a weird way, kind of like how, of course, Iron Man 2 and what's the other famous I think it's Age of Ultron were both basically just like, we're kind of phoning these in so that way they can introduce these people for the bigger story.
Yeah.
And I kind of hope that doesn't happen with Mandalorian.
That's what I'm worried about long term. I think season 1 did an incredible job, and I'm not complaining about season 2, other than it had a lot of cameos. Um, I still enjoyed the story that was told in season 2. So you just have to be concerned with oh, are we just going to be introducing all these people and we're getting background overall story?
Yeah. Yeah.
I guess we'll see you next week.
Very, very true. Very true. But that does move us to our main topic of the Bad Batch. That was our final story for tonight. Uh, the Bad Batch season 2, episode 10. This one was called, oh, I had it here earlier today.
Retrieval.
The Retrieval. Yes, the Retrieval. This is basically part 2 of our last episode being the part 1, episode 9. Um, Katie, overall thoughts on this one? Like, how'd you feel? Was this kind of a non-episode for you, or kind of like how last episode there was an important moment with Tech and Omega? Like, did you feel any of that kind of in this episode at all, or what?
I feel like this was an important story to have. I think it kind of gives you that real world feel to what happens, especially with the boss guy in charge. I do feel like they should have done a better job casting the boss guy, because the boss guy is the only alien involved. Everybody else is human.
Yes.
There needed to be way more aliens involved in this, or the boss guy needed to be human as well, because it doesn't look good to have this be, because aliens are supposed to be like the racial tones of Star Wars and everything, and I'm like, no, this is not good. You're like saying this is the bad guy here, like.
Yeah, and I could totally see that. But I also think like, and I think this is kind of going in the wrong way, kind of compared to what you're saying. But you need somebody that looks, sounds, and kind of like just feels menacing. And let's face it, the way that they made him, like, I feel like they could have made him human just as big, have the claw arm, and be just as disgusting because yes, there was a scene where he just pigged out and I was just like, I'm not vibing with this. Um,
Yeah.
he could have been human. So I think you're right. I think that they could have done a little bit better with this, especially like if you're gonna say that he is in complete control of these minds, like make some of these miners, different alien species as well. And the cop out was for this episode, I totally saw it. There's a moment in this episode where he is surrounded, the bad guy, Mako, is surrounded by the miners, and they all are the exact same character, just duplicated. It is literally a mining hat with goggles and a bandana over their nose and mouth. They legit
Yeah.
just drew that character and then copy pasted it like 20 times.
Yeah, and you can even see that in the tally scene, like where they're all like pretty much identical characters. They just all have some sort of different face covering on. Like, it's really lazy looking, this episode. I don't mind the story that's being told. And like, especially the next 2 episodes, y'all. Oh my gosh. Like, please do not skip the Bad Batch and just go, "Oh, after the Mandalorian, I after the Mandalorian season 3 is done, I'll just binge the rest of Bad Batch." Please do not. The next 2 episodes are so fucking good. Please, 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 please don't skip them. Please.
this is why I think they should still put these shows on separate days. Like, I think that Mandalorian, unfortunately, will probably uh kind of overshadow the Bad Batch. Thankfully, I have that day off, so I will be watching both, of course, and we will be covering both on this show. But in regards to the episode, I did feel that this was kind of a blase kind of episode, kind of how I felt with last week. There was another moment with Tech and Omega at the very end of this episode that I think was like the heart of this episode overall. Um, Omega makes the statement of there's a lot of people like Mako in the state of saying like there's not just the empire that people have to fear. There's going to be a lot of people taking advantage of war and taking advantage of people. um Again, I like these moments where Omega grows because she is just a kid. I'm not going to treat her like she's an adult, like she knows everything, and I don't think they should write her like that. I think that it is very smart of them to treat her age. And for there to be actual character development there. But after she states that, it's is and it's more of like a like almost stating like we need to do more. You know, it's
Hmm.
we're not just fighting the empire here. We have to go out and go save people. We need to be the heroes of the galaxy. And Tech says, "Well, you need to know also there's a lot of people like us too." And that is of course hinting at our heroes that we all know and love, being Luke Skywalker in the future, Leia Organa, Han Solo, all of them. I think it's very nice and very touching. Uh, I I feel so bad for their droid, because it was like a second thought to them. Um,
Yep.
Omega was like, "Oh, wait a second, we could just do this," and they were able to find their ship. Which I don't know how to feel about how some droids within this universe are like so well taken care of and so loved and all of this. And like Omega does say, like, you know, he is also family. Like we have to go save him or whatever. But like comparatively to like you see freaking R2D2 or C3PO or other droids in the other shows that of oh, I'm forgetting his name. Rebels. Uh, 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 uh,
Chopper.
Chopper. Yes, like the way that people treat them like they are just any normal crew member, of their kind of just ransack crew. And then this droid here, I'm just like, man, they got him dirty. That's so mad. That made me so mad. Um, but yeah, shout out to Spider-Man in this episode. That being the kid that we follow in this episode.
Hmm.
He is
Benny.
Benny. He is voiced by Yuri Lowenthal. Of course, he is the Spider-Man in the Spider-Man PS4 game. Um,
Okay.
yeah, immediately recognized his voice. So
I
I was like,
recognize him. I just couldn't place him.
"Where is he from? Where is he from?" And then as soon as he has this like twang in the way that he like when his voice gets louder, you can
Yeah.
definitely hear like kind of like that Urenthal type of like voice, and I'm like, "Ah, that's Spider-Man. That's Peter Parker." So really cool that he made an appearance here in Star Wars. Um, Trying to think of anything else. I think that the rest. Oh, so uh uh actually, you know what, that is something else. That is our after credits that I'm gonna bring up. But it does funny enough pertain to something that we learned in this episode here of the Bad Batch. But anything else on this episode? I don't really have a whole lot to talk about.
I don't think so. But again, I'm just gonna say it one more time. Y'all, please don't skip the next 2 episodes. Please don't skip the next 2 episodes. Like shit gets real. Okay. And I cannot wait to talk about next week's episode. I'm so excited to talk about next week's episode. So,
All right. Well, we do have listener questions. This will close out the episode. Of course, we will be doing an after credits. The after credits, though, will be a separate episode uh that we
if you're
will,
listening,
if you are listening to us, we will do that and you will be able to actually have it on your feeds immediately. So looking at our lovely email, we have David, who he sent me a DM and he's like, "Hey, I don't use Twitter. Can you please give us the email so we can go back and forth?" I gave him the email and he has several questions. So we're gonna sit down and answer these. But he says, "Thank you so much for the email. I'm still not able to navigate the different GUA locations for contacts, and I couldn't find the email anywhere. I see now that it's the same tag as the Twitter." I noticed immediately after I read this that I have not been putting the Gmail in the show notes. So, David, thank you so much for bringing this to our attention, and I will be adding that to the show notes later tonight. He says, "First off, I love listening to y'all. You scratch that itch for the High Republic. I've been a Star Wars fan for decades, and I love the takes that y'all have on it all. Your news segment is terrific because you share things that don't pop up on any of my feeds. Thank you both, Katie and Clay." He says, "I have a few questions and comments. Um, so I'm going to read the first one. You'll read the second one, and we'll go back and forth here." So he says, "Feel free to respond, answer them on the air. Well, I prefer one of those two. I'm really not on social media. I'm a teacher who commutes listening to y'all to and from school on Thursdays. I completely understand. I am a delivery driver for a large chain here in Texas, and I listen to podcasts all the freaking time or audiobooks. But the first question, fresh on the mind, but I'm wondering if you know if there is a reason that the creators of the Bad Batch went with Ipsium for the explosive material and not coaxium. Obviously, there is more than one explosive material in the galaxy, but it's already well known and in the same time frame. Solo, any thoughts?"
so for those who are like, what the heck is coaxium other than an explosive material? Coaxium is the unrefined fuel basically for the hyperdrive. So in its unrefined state, it is explosive, very similar to Ipsium. Obviously, we saw that in the Bad Batch. My answer to this question, because the Bad Batch is happening roughly 14 years before Solo. Uh, I'm really thinking that the creators and the story group in general chose to have the Bad Batch go in a direction where they didn't really have to link to anything canonically. Because if you look, the archaeological episode that we got, um, you could have easily placed some High Republic stuff in there and it would have been great. Some of like the treasures that she's talking about, you could have easily thrown in like the Rod of Seasons and it would have been a cool reference point for those who are in the High Republic. I just think that they're choosing to stick the show out of cannot can't they're choosing to stick it outside of canon right now. It's still canon, but the references it needs to make don't have to be canon, and so they're just making things up. I wish they wouldn't, because we've got roughly 760 planets in Star Wars right now. And I think the Bad Batch added like
Excuse me,
11 to
what?
12 right now. Yes. 760-ish planets. It's been counted. New Newbedigan Prime on Twitter did all the amazing work. And there was the map that was given out at Star Wars Celebration last year. So everybody's kind of like detailed all this, but it's a lot of planets. And I think they need to I think they need to shrink things again and try and like connect all these things versus having a one-off reference to all these planets like we had in the Bad Batch right now.
Very true. Um, my answer to this is I have no freaking idea. And the reason why I say that is because there is, spoiler alert, a third explosive material that is introduced in the book that we were about to review. And I was like, it's not this, it's not coaxium. Like, I didn't even remember coaxium until Dave reminded me, and then I read that part in the battle scars, and I was like, "It's neither one of those. What's going on?" Like, I was so upset with the brand new fragment of my brain that is just like, "Hey, remember all the Star Wars stuff? Nothing is linking together." Um, so yeah, there is that. Katie, what about question 2?
So, is it possible for y'all to cover some of the High Republic comic content? I haven't ever read comics until I noticed that there were some cool Phase 1 comics, and I've fully committed to Phase 2 and have spent now hundreds of dollars on other Star Wars comics. David, right there with you. Right there with you, dude. I am loving The Blade and the High Republic adventures with Sav Maligan and would love to hear more of your take on them. Like why it's taking forever for the High Republic adventures to release. We kind of talked about that earlier. Printing issues, basically. That's your answer. It's been about 4 months with 2 issues. On a side note, to hopefully convince you, you mentioned the path of the open hand in the Battle of Jeddah review and wondering if they were there for an artifact. This has been answered in the most recent High Republic comic. I just read that comic. I'm not going to spoil it for Clay. I completely agree with you that I think the whole thing was a distraction effort. But also, like, the Herald making an effort to kind of go his own way. So I think kind of paths are diverging, and we're going to see more of that as things come to a close. But what do you think about covering more comic content, Clay?
I do I don't mind covering it. Um, but just to remind you, Katie, a decision that we haven't really made public, that you had made on your
Yeah,
own as far as our Patreon, you were going to cover a lot of the more current stuff on Patreon. So if you want to decide to
thanks for
change
that
that up a bit,
plug. Thanks
yeah.
for that plug, Clay. No, so most of the current comics that are running right now. I am about to do an episode on Dr. Afra, the Alyssa Long run. Talked about that again earlier. Um, so that is going to be my plan. I'm gonna cycle through Bounty Hunters, and then we'll be cycling through Star Wars, as well as the Darth Vader run. My plan would be though that hopefully at least for the High Republic, because I think this is a story that you and I are both relating to a lot, is once the trades come out we're going to do a deep dive like we did for Phase 1, and kind of go through the entire trade and go, okay, this is what we thought, this is what the story is, here's the art and everything, and kind of dive more into the nitty gritty of at least the High Republic stuff. I wasn't planning on doing the High Republic there. I know that I did, in fact, do the High Republic stuff with Matt. Matt has kind of given up, which is why we're going in a different direction. Uh, so if you want, Clay and I have done Phase 1 trade reviews in previous
And
episodes, and then
the
Matt and I did the episodes on Patreon.
Yes, and there was also an episode where we actually covered, because we had no content to cover, the Trail of Shadows.
Yeah.
So there is that out in the feeds as well. But I would honestly, if we can keep up with them, because that is something else. Um,
Yeah.
I Actually, I can't disclose that, so skip over that. But the fact is, we just talked about how much money that comics can get, as far as what's coming out March 1st. They are a little bit pricey. We try to read everything, to be completely honest. But we know for sure that we are both collectors of the franchise of Star Wars when it comes to comics. I am more invested in the High Republic stuff right now, but I am reading the main line of Star Wars. That's kind of like my. I do High Republic #1. I read the mainline Star Wars title, and then everything else I wouldn't necessarily say is an afterthought, but it is something that I'm willing to say, "Oh, I'll catch up with that later."
Yeah.
Um, in all honesty, Dave, with the way that you are enjoying the High Republic stuff, I would be 100% for reviewing the High Republic stuff for now, on the show. But that's totally up to Katie, and we can definitely talk about that off air if you want to.
Yeah, I think I'm totally willing to do that. I still plan on doing like the Dr. Aphra, like the current runs of Star Wars. We're gonna do those in a Patreon episode, and maybe who knows, those will come to Star Wars Alliance's feed at some point in the future. But if there's ever like a mini run that you're interested in having us cover, like I know there's the Yoda comic that's going on right now. And that one has been super interesting to me. Though Cavan is done with his run now, and I believe Jody Hauser took over it, the writing, so it'll be interesting to see how that changes. But anyways, um if there's ever a run that you want us to tackle other than High Republic, feel free to reach out, and we'd love to pick it up, especially if it's on something like Marvel Unlimited, where it's easy for us to access.
Exactly, for sure.
So I'm gonna read this next question because this is kind of a thing you're gonna have to answer.
Okay, go ahead.
So, technical question. I listened to you on Apple Podcasts, and I'm wondering if you're aware of the issues with the recordings or if there's a problem on my end. Occasionally, you'll break and give an ad warning, but no ad will play. Sometimes the recording loops, and I hear things you've already said. In the most recent episode reviewing Bad Batch Season 2, Episode 9, the episode abruptly ends as Katie was giving her handles. Is this a problem, or is it just me, my phone, or the app?
So, I think it's actually something with the website that we use for our distribution of the podcast. So I have run into these problems even today, actually, listening to Joe in the latest review of The Last of Us. Sometimes it'll completely just stop, and you see the little audio bar actually progressing, but there's no audio. There's so many different things. I have experienced the exact same stuff in the sense of audio looping, and the fact that there's sometimes no ads. That is, of course, also we use Spreaker, so we have a little bit of a uh, I wouldn't say contract. I'm not entirely sure all of the technical things with that. That is a Travis Snow question. He is the big man. He is the boss on that. But I think sometimes if like a quota is met with ads or whatever, sometimes they're not always added in the spots that we say that they are. This has also happened with that of the Geekverse podcast. I'll listen to them sometimes and they'll prompt an ad and an ad won't show up. So, in all honesty, if you're having issues listening to them via either Apple Podcasts. I use Pocket Casts. What I have always found to be the easier way out, and it is easier said than done, um, because some people actually pay for YouTube Red and they can close their phone and still listen to the audio. I wish I had that, but I don't pay for YouTube Red. So what I do, and a nifty trick that my wife showed me is if you are listening to YouTube and you don't necessarily want to like just always watch it on your phone or whatever, if you scroll your basically your tasks on your iPhone and kind of just leave it like that, especially if you're like connected to like a car or a charger, it leaves the screen open and you're able to listen to it and walk around with it. For me, especially when I'm just listening to podcasts on YouTube, while I'm like doing the gestures or whatever, I connect to a charger. I put the screen on never close and I just listen to it. That is just easiest thing for me. I have been a bigger advocate for YouTube recently. I wasn't a big YouTube watcher for many years, but when I joined the GUA, I just was like, hey, this stuff is actually good entertainment, and it's an actually pretty good website. So if you don't have the access, or you're just getting frustrated with Apple Podcasts and all the other apps, just watch it on YouTube or listen to it on YouTube. That's what I would say.
And we do apologize, y'all. We have no control over it. I'm sorry. Like, we do appreciate you listening again. Um, and that's kind of why we give the warnings for what ads might occur at the beginning, so that we don't have to give them every time. But also because we place those ad warnings in, and they may not actually pop up there.
Yeah.
So
Next is actually kind of funny. So I'm going to go ahead and read that one. This is his fourth, and he said, "These are more of comments now. I think Clay should read the Thrawn Ascendancy trilogy. It's Thrawn's origins, so my opinion uh, can you can skip the first three Thrawn books. Someone brought to my attention that he has many non neurotypical tendencies, and I found a group of people loving these books because he displays many autism spectrum tendencies. In book three, he says some things that also could be seen as confirmation of this. After Bad Batch season 2, episode 9's discussion on tech, and this is the way that of thinking, Clay mentioned some background in this. I think if you consider this as Thrawn's way of being omniscient, then you okay. If autism is a freaking superpower, like I guess, but he says he continues, then you will be okay with the events he lives through, and by the maker, even begin to enjoy Thrawn a bit more. Um, I I have contemplated on this. I think that I will give the trilogy a try, not now. Katie and I have a lot of plans for other books this year, and we have a lot of reading to do because little tease, we even have a book that's not Star Wars related planned for a secret show that's going to come out later this year. So more plugs. It's going to be a lot of fun. But I have been thinking about it because lo and behold, I think what's gonna happen, Katie, I think that the Ahsoka show is gonna bring up Thrawn, and I'm gonna be like, God damn it, this dude's a badass. And I'm gonna want to read the book.
Yeah, I think you're going to as well. I think also I agree because this is the way I wish Greg would have read it, is the Thrawn Ascendancy trilogy first before going into the Thrawn trilogy, because I think the Thrawn Ascendancy trilogy is just giving you some much needed background on why Thrawn is in the Empire in the first place and
Yeah.
what he's there for. So I agree. I think the Thrawn Ascendancy books were really good books. So, but I also enjoy Thrawn as character. So who knows? Who knows? But yes, we have a lot of good things planned. We have Cataclysm next. So after Clay catches up on all his comics, he's got to read Cataclysm because I've already finished it and I need somebody to talk to.
I am reading comics while reading Cataclysm the next few weeks. I but there's a lot of explanation will come in this review coming up here shortly. Again, you can listen to the review now. It is on your feeds already. But yeah, let's go ahead and to
Nathan's in the chat. He says, I love the Thrawn book from 2015, which is the original Thrawn book. I was not a fan of the Thrawn book because I read Heir to the Empire and the Hand of Thrawn duology, and that book just like also the book had 3 protagonists and it was named Thrawn. Why do you have 3 protagonists and the book is
three
named Thrawn?
three Thrawn, it's all the same. Nathan, I don't know if you've been here for the last few episodes, but I am not loving the novelization of Thrawn's character. Absolutely annoying. But to end out the email here, Katie, you want to read that last bit? Number
Yeah.
5.
He said, I want to thank you as well for my own introduction to your podcast. Star Wars fans can be toxic. I myself have had many disagreements about the quality of Star Wars over the years and hold many opinions that you helped me to realize are opinions and not fact. I truly believe you are helpful in this regard because I disagree with many of the things you share about. I tell you immediately, but obviously you can't hear me. I've noticed that I do this less and less. Thank you for helping me to be more sociable with my love of Star Wars. My wife thanks you too. This meant the ever loving world to me because this is something that I wanted for this podcast. As somebody who grew up a Legends fan and is still a Legends fan, bridging the gap between people who are like Disney Star Wars is evil and Legends is evil is like terrifying, especially when you're on Star Wars Twitter. Y'all,
Yeah.
like I like it's absolutely terrifying and it was thing that made me the most scared to do a Star Wars podcast. But when I told Snell I wanted to do a Star Wars podcast, I still wanted to do it. It just was terrifying. So yeah, David, this meant the world to me because this is what I've striven to do. We live by this, and we're going to talk about this in the post credits review of Battle Scars. That you can love bits and pieces of a universe and still love the entire freaking universe. It's a thing. And there can be bits and pieces that you don't like and are like, okay, I read that once. I don't ever want to do it again. And move on with your life because there is no need to hate watch or hate read things. So thank you. I
100%.
appreciate you.
Yes.
Um so much.
I just want to say thank you so much, Dave, for reaching out to us. We would love for anybody and everybody to send in their questions, comments, concerns. Again, right here down below, scrolling on the YouTube, is our Star Wars Alliance hotline 1-830-538-4828. If you would like to text us, call us. Of course, I will not answer. You will leave a voicemail. For us to listen to here on the show and discuss. It would be
and the
greatly appreciated.
and the other option, of course, is what David did. You can reach out to us on email. It's Star Wars Alliance without the A in the words at gmail.com. And I'm going to make Clay add it to the scrolly bar below so that it's like both of them.
Yes,
But it's a great way to reach out to us if you're not on social media. Obviously, social media platforms, you can reach out to us. It's Star Wars Alliance without the A in the wars. Very important, don't forget it. So that is the perfect way to reach us. And obviously, just as a side note, would love for you guys to leave comments if you love the show, if you hate the show, on your favorite podcatcher of choice, because those reviews mean a lot. So, and Nathan's been chiming in over here in the comments. And Nathan and I had this very conversation when he was hosting on the show. He said, "Yep, personally love Star Wars, but not down with most of the newer stuff. So I don't watch/read if I'm not into it and move on and just stick to the stuff I do love." And Nathan, that's why I love you, man. We can agree to disagree, and the world continues to go round, y'all. Continues to go round.
exactly. But with that, that does remind us we do have a book review that we will be recording here on the YouTube. Again, already in your feeds. Go check it out. So, of course, you can always find me at Fanboy Clay on Twitter. uh I have been somehow locked out of my Mastodon. Tried so get this. What I did was I could not post. Every single time I attempted to post on Mastodon, my app would like just hard reset or hard shut down. So I was like, "Oh, I will log out. I will delete the app. I will log back in and everything will be fine."
Mm-mm.
And then I have attempted to log back in, and the email to get like a new password and stuff just is not sending at all. It's just not giving me a prompt to reset my email. So I think I've lost my Mastodon unless I make a new one. But of course, you can always find me on my other shows here on the network, Ranger Alliance. Me and Jake are going to be on the next episode this upcoming Monday. So go listen to that. We're going to be jumping into the world of Power Rangers Zeo. That's going to be awesome. And then, of course, over not on the network is Batman News Weekly, where me and my friend that I used to work with, best friend for the last 5 years, will be talking nothing but Batman in TV, movie, comics, video games, and all other pop culture.
Nathan just wants to know what's Mastodon. Nathan,
It's
you don't want to know.
you're not going to join it, so you're good.
Y'all, you can find me on all the places. It's at Slice of Katie. Um, and if social media explodes like we think it's going to, just find my personal website, sliceofkatie.com, and I will put a post where you can find us, me, this show, and my other show on the Geek Ultimate Alliance Podcast Network. It's at Slice of Film 1 on Twitter. We just did Chris and I just did an episode for Indiana Jones Temple of Doom in the Journey to Dial of Destiny. So you can go check that review out. It was a lot of fun to record. It's also a short one. So bonus points, I guess. I don't know. um, so next up for that show is going to be Mission Impossible 3, as well as the top movies of 2022, as long as I don't get sick this weekend, because that's when we're supposed to record it. So we'll see what happens. um, so those are the next episodes you can find for the show. Obviously, next week, here for Star Wars Alliance, Mando, episode 1, Bad Batch, episode 11. So be here for that. Be here, be square. Because it's gonna be fun. We will probably push news. We'll see how Mando goes, because I'm actually gonna get up early in the morning and watch Mando, because I haven't been doing that for Bad Batch because I watched all of them before. So, um, but yeah, y'all, seriously, thanks for being here. I want to wish everyone, if my voice will stay, I want to wish everyone a great day or night, whatever 10 day you are listening or watching, and we will see y'all next time. May the force be with you. Oh my gosh, I almost lost my voice. And yes, I know we're still live, people.
Yes,
Hi.
but we are transitioning into our book review, of course, being Star Wars Jedi Battle Scars. I will write the new time when we finally start. But Katie, do you need to reset on any type of drinks or anything?
Yes, I do. I'll
Okay,
be right back.
all right. In the meantime, I will have a conversation with Nathan here. He's talking about Ranger comics. Yeah, dude. I will say this: continue reading them. It gets even better. Necessary Evil was probably one of my favorite stories. Ryan Parrott is just awesome. But if you like the Ranger comics, then you definitely need to jump on board with Image Comics, with the massive verse with Radiant Black, Rogue Sun, The Dead Lucky, and now the new one being Inferno Girl Red. Inferno Girl Red is heavily influenced on Power Rangers. I mean, majority of them are, but you definitely need to try them out. Very cool stuff. AKA Indy 5, The Search for Social Security. Uh it's funny, dude, because like I think that, like, for me, I'm not a huge Indiana Jones fan. Almost like kind of like how 005 005 007, I wasn't like a huge 007 fan. I'm kind of excited for this Indiana Jones. I've read the first two Radiant Black books. They're excellent. Yeah, it's absolutely amazing. There's one that connects them all called Supermassive. It's Supermassive issue 1. That was their 2022 book. Supermassive issue number 2 is coming out later this year. They just kind of teased it and somewhat announced it. But more on that later. Wink, wink. There's wink, wink. Something going on. Wink, wink. In the GUA. Wink, wink. That will talk more about that. Wink, wink. Got to cut all this out. Wink, wink. See here. So from 120, 51 onward, I have to cut. Not a problem. Katie has not been feeling well. She thinks she has COVID. We're hoping for the best. But she needs to refill on liquids. It doesn't look like there's anything for the GV podcast, guys. Been doing a lot of reading lately, novels and comics. That's most of the media I consume for the last year and a half. I have been doing a lot of comics. I'm sure you've heard, but we've been doing this whole like comic book reading challenge thing. And as of last month, I think that I am 300 comics in with January and February. And I think it was just January on its own that I had, let's see here, as of the end of, well, February 3rd, I had read uh, 308 comics in the year of 2023 so far. So it's been a year already. Um, I plan on starting Percy Jackson for the show. Uh, haven't read those books since middle school, so I plan on doing that. Also need to let Abby know. Trades and omnibuses. I have been doing single issues, and then I've been reading the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. That is basically in like a collector's format, almost like an omnibus. All right, Katie, you ready? I know that you're muted, so you can't really answer right now.
Thanks for reminding me. Yeah, I think I'm ready.
All right, so writing this time down 126, 28. Actually, I'll do the intro to this so that way you can take a little bit of a breather.
I was sprinting, y'all.
It's all good. Uh, so I will start it in three, two. Hello and welcome to another episode of Star Wars Alliance. This is a special episode because we will be reviewing Star Wars Jedi Battle Scars. I said we because, of course, like always, Katie is with me today. Katie, we just did a very hefty episode of our regular episode show, Star Wars Alliance. But you ready for this? You ready for this review?
No, I'm not, because y'all, I hate being negative about things. And don't get me wrong, like that's a spoiler alert. Sorry, y'all. But like there's good parts of this, and there's parts that I loved. Uh, but there's a lot of parts that I didn't like, and I'm sorry, Sam Maggs, and I'm sorry, Tom, and I'm sorry, Random House Worlds, because I think this is like the first Star Wars book that I really just was like, I never want to read this again.
This one hurt, guys. You are in for probably a really short review because there probably won't be too much, but at the same time there may be some good talking points. So we've kind of had our back and forths in texting, but we haven't said too much so that way we could still have some things to say here tonight. So yes, of course, we are going to be spoiling the book Star Wars
We're gonna do a
Jedi.
non-spoiler
Yes,
review first, though.
we will do a non-spoiler, then we will do a spoiler for Star Wars Jedi Battle Scars. This is the book that is the in between of the two video games, of course, that being Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, and of course, the new video game coming up, that being Star Wars Jedi Survivor. So non spoilers, Katie. What did you think about this book?
So I loved the Marin portions. I loved the Marin portions. Um, and I loved a lot of like the stuff that we got with Cal. I thought Cal was really well personalized. And I love some of like the sapphic elements of like the romance that we got between, and I can't remember her name for the life of me, the Kashiri, the analyst for the Empire. Um, I loved the romance we got between them, the bits and pieces, and I loved the sexual tension. I'm always here for some sexual tension, y'all. Um, and I think that's about it. I I I think that's all I really liked. Um, for me, the game, the game. This is how much I think of this book, y'all. The book leans very much into this is a video game script that was like a scrapped concept idea, and that they said, "Oh, you know what would be cool? An adaptation." And handed this off to somebody who needed to like get involved in Star Wars in some way and just get her feet wet. And I feel like that's what this was. And Nathan's over here telling me to settle down, and screw you,
And
Nathan.
no, and it's more so he's saying settle down because of the sexual tension stuff. I will say my
Oh yeah.
non-spoilers, and I will say this. Um this book is hot, horny, and like all that stuff. Give me more of that stuff. We've talked about this before. There needs to be more sex in Star Wars, and they're just not giving it to us. This book. Now, I will say, non-spoiler slash spoiler here. Um, there were some times where it wasn't necessary, and it was put in a very awkward position. Um, pun intended, didn't. Um, but I think that uh the moments of passion it needed to lean more into for the overall story because the story that we got was a non-story in
Yeah.
my mind in regards to this novel. Uh and you're right. I think that is really it for the non-spoiler stuff because I think that we definitely need to break this down. We won't go chapter by chapter. We're gonna kind of go all over the place. But I'm gonna jump in first with some of my spoilers here. You kind of mentioned it in the non-spoiler section, uh, but in regards to the video game aspect of this novel, I read I think it was like within the first 4 chapters, it it read like I was reading the description of somebody explaining a YouTube video of the game. They were Sam Mags kind of went a little too heavy on kind of the descriptive words of like the move sets and all of this other stuff that Cal Kestis was doing. Uh and That's another big problem of this book. And what I was teasing in the main show earlier tonight was the first 8 chapters of this book. It took me so long to read. Again, this book is only 19 chapters. This book is short compared to everything else that we have read in the like the High Republic stuff, everything that we've read. This is the shortest book we have ever read. And
Yeah.
it took me the longest to read this book because I didn't want to finish it. As heartbreaking as it is for me to say that. After the first 8 chapters, I did not want to finish it. Then I got a text from Katie saying, "Hey, I'm gonna go on to chapter 9 because of what happened at the end." Um, and there's some moments there. Like there's some moments here within this book that I feel like could have been something. And my biggest hangup is that Sam Maggs needed to write a Cal Mirren story. And that's all it needed to be. If if she was told, "Hey, write these 2 characters in an adventure," I think the book would have turned out so much better than what it came out to be. I know that one of your critiques via Twitter today was that we didn't get a whole lot of Cal. There was a lot of moments where Cal was incapacitated or
Mhm.
doing busy work, which I'm gonna sound uh very misogynistic right now, and I don't mean to be. Um, the story goes, and the game is in the perspective of Cal Kestis. So I think a lot of people are going to buy this book thinking the exact same thing. Is it a negative that a lot of the story leans on Mirren? No, because like we said, I think a lot of the stuff that happens with Mirren is the good stuff. And I think that's where a lot of Sam's focus on her better writing is with Mirren. But like, and the thing was, I even texted you. There was a moment in this story uh where Cal and Seer are having a conversation about what their futures are and what their crew needs to focus on. And I was like, "Oh, there's something good in here." This was so much of a non-story for me. I've already forgotten that point that I wanted to talk about. Like that's so
Yeah.
disappointing to me that nothing stood out within this story. Um, I was almost really pissed because they teased at the end of a chapter the possible death of a very important character within this group, and I, I legit I I stopped reading. I went to Twitter, I went to Google, and I had to make sure that this character was alive. Um, and it was proven. Something happens with oh my god, Grease, that like it almost looks like he like dies at the end of a chapter. And I think that's really the only like jaw-dropping moment in this book. And one of the things that I said to Katie, I want to actually read verbatim what the text was to you. Was I said, uh because you were talking about the whole thing with the video game aspect, that I said I can't get past it. Instead of a Star Wars adventure, Sam Maggs wrote a video game story that happens to have Star Wars characters in it.
Hmm.
And that's unfortunately how I feel about this book. Nothing about this felt like it was within the Star Wars universe, other than you can't even say, oh, they had lightsabers, because Sam Maggs referenced it as sword so many
Or
times.
staff.
Yeah,
And that like that's the most confusing thing about like the staff portion is like I get it's double bladed, but it's not a staff. Like it's the double bladed lightsaber. It's still a double bladed sword even because I complained to you about that at the beginning.
yeah,
And she does go on to use lightsaber more throughout the end of the book, but at the very beginning, like it goes sword, sword, staff, sword, 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 saber. And it's like it really feels like a video game description right there where they were like, okay, we don't need to say what this is
yeah,
necessarily because this could be modded onto like a Knights of the Old Republic or here, or it could be like literally a olden times video game. I don't know, but
yeah.
that's what it felt like. And I hate that for Max because I think her short story that she wrote, I think it's the Clone Wars one was very promising. I loved that story. And I hate that it's like this because I wanted to love this. And
And
again, there's parts I love, but it's also like ugh.
I will say also, I knew Sam Maggs from her run on the Unstoppable Wasp from Marvel. I absolutely love that book. So I was really excited to read this as well. It was just a disappointment that I think she may have been constricted with some of the character progression, because of course this is technically Star Wars canon. Games are canon, and
Mhm.
so maybe she wasn't allowed to do what she probably wanted to do. I don't know. I don't know exactly what the circumstances were. Um, but some other things that I wanted to bring up. Um, Saying that it's a non-story is kind of a cop out of just like, oh, anybody can say it's a non-story. This book was 19 chapters, and I feel like 14 of those chapters was trying to set up the real hidden mission that you find out in chapter 16.
Yeah. And
And
that's what I told you, right? I remember, like, talking after an episode, and you were like, "This is a slog. I'm trying to get through this." And I was like, "Okay, well, at the very least, like, chapter 13, chapter 14, it, like, speeds up."
yeah.
That is a benefit of me reading ahead of you, is I can give you all these things.
Well, and like the thing is, like for me, the whole point of the story is that they meet this individual that is, and I won't give too much away because I do believe in giving people the opportunity to or try out their own opinions on reading these books and whatever. But of course, we are spoiling this book. There is an individual within this story that is a part of the Empire that says that she's not a part of the Empire, and like the whole mission is surrounding this individual and like saving somebody. And this there's there's this MacGuffin, right? The shroud is what they call this thing, and
Yeah.
there's a bigger description of it, but I'm just going to call it the MacGuffin of the story. um and then chapter, like I said, 15, 16, that character says, "Oh, that actually wasn't the real mission. I was just doing all of this on being, a selfish lover of this individual. So, can we actually save us from this individual instead? And that's the real mission behind this." Um, and I just feel like that it there was no real stakes in this story. There was never a moment where I'm like, this is the adventure. Like this is where we're finally moving towards. It was just all just more setup, more setup, more setup. Oh, we're gonna go to this character. Oh, here's a really sexy, hot, and steamy scene. Like those were nice. Like we talked about it. Those, I'm telling you, Sam Mags. Whew, you write like wow. That is so awkward too, especially like me knowing the layout of the Mantis because I've played the game. That is a very small ship. I'm sure not a whole lot can escape the ears of anybody who is in the Mantis. So very interested
Nothing
on
was
how those,
escaping them in the book.
yeah. So very interested to just how all of that worked out. But uh but one aspect of this whole book that I did not like, because I think it's only something that can happen in a video game, and that is BD having the ability to shoot out these uh Bancta stems, these stem packs. So in the video game, in order to heal yourself, if you are about to die, you press a button, BD shoots out this stem, Cal grabs it, punctures himself, and it heals you. That made this book so boring because there was never a moment where I'm like, they're gonna die. No, because Sam Maggs made it a point to be like, oh, but here comes BD. He's coming to save the day with the stems.
I think you have to have that in an instance, and I completely agree with you. I went back and forth because I played Fallen Order to a certain point. I went back and forth between, you know what? This is a cool reference for the video game people too. Wow, this is really annoying, and I just wish like we could just treat this like a book because and like he's actually hurt and doesn't have BD1 just sitting there on his shoulder like just going, "Oh, okay, yeah." Zoop, zoop, zoop.
Hmm.
And that's I think the big difference. And y'all can call me a video game hater all you want. I don't care. Like I read things to have the stakes and I'm not actually sitting here playing it. I don't want to have to like worry about, oh, did I just shoot a stim in to like get to the next level. I just want to I want to keep going. And I think that stuff sacrifices some of the other character development. Like there's some really cool things in here for Siri that are just like surface level. And like I want to dive into that. Like there's a scene where we get like it feels like Siri's about to almost like bleed her kyber crystal with how close she is to the dark side. And it's some really cool like imagery that Mags is able to draw up. And it's just like give me more of that. And like we hit bits and pieces, but it's never enough to
Yeah.
like really hit the story home. Uh
Yeah.
there's some cool tropes that Mags likes to play on, like for instance, Siri and Cal go through. My phone is over here like, oh hi, you're talking to me. um
Her name, by the way, you were saying it wrong. It's not Siri, it's Seer.
Oh, shoot, I'm sorry. Seer. That's probably why my phone is like, what the heck are you talking about? I'm so sorry. Seer and Cal are going through and they're wearing like the hooded cloaks. And like she says something about, oh, like I tried to get them away from this, or I just wish they'd see how much this actually makes them look like a Jedi, even though they're trying to pretend they're not Jedi, kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's really cool to play on those tropes, but like, and maybe it's a length issue. Maybe they said this needs to be a short book so we can get the video game people involved, and then we can do maybe other things later on down the line. But I wish this was like 25 chapters, really, just to give Mags a better shot of
Yeah.
like filling those things in.
I did so the moment with Seer that you're describing was when she was fighting Fifth Brother. Um and she is contemplating on what to do. One of the biggest problems that I had with this book as well was the what I felt, and this may have been on purpose, and I just missed the mark on the way that I was reading it. But none of these characters really felt like who they were at the end of the Fallen Order. Again, this book does take place years after, because I think it was Grease that mentioned at one point, like, we've been at this for years, we've been running for years, like we're a family, all of these different things. Um, but there is one point in particular that they're trying to like point the like they're trying to figure out who's to blame because they're all just mad at each other. Like, I didn't like that scene whatsoever. That scene was very just like, it kind of felt like a whole bunch of kids. Like, oh, well, he did it. Well, no, he did it. Oh, well, how do you know that he did it? You're the one that did this. And it was just like all back and forth, blah, blah, blah. And finally, you have the character that's outside of the Mantis crew being the one to stop it. Um, I don't know. Um, the I'm trying to think of some other more positive moments here. Uh, the idea that, like, for me, one of the biggest things, because I went ahead and told the GUA my feelings on this, and Joe joked around, was like, oh well, this is canon, so if I don't buy it or if I don't read it, then that leaves a giant hole in my comic or in my bookshelf for Star Wars canon stuff. And I don't see the next game referencing anything from this book. I can
Well, it's gonna have to, right? Because of I'm just gonna say it, because of Grease's injury. It's going to
Yes,
have to reference that.
it has to. But if it doesn't, like, that will be very telling. Um,
Yep.
but like I would be very surprised if they do. If they do, then I'm like, okay, cool. Like, this is Star Wars canon. They can do whatever they want. It just didn't hit the mark for me. And that's totally fine. That is a-okay. One of the big things that I posted today on Twitter is that we don't need to love everything 100% all the time. Because I'll be honest, sometimes that's super boring to just love everything all the time. Um, the, like, and I'm not saying that you need to hate everything all the time either. I'm just saying, like, with this, it didn't hit the mark for me. But somewhere else in the Star Wars universe and something that I'm gonna read, I'm really gonna love it. And then I'll kind of like this one, and I will kind of dislike this. Like, I I'm okay with having different mediums, and I think that's the purpose. You got to find what you like, whether it be video games, whether it be novels, whether it be comics, whether it be TV shows, whether it be movies. You know, I think it's a good way to go about, because in no way, shape, or form Lucasfilm loses,
Yep.
because they are winning on every level with someone.
Yep. And that's the important part, right? Like this book does a ton for representation in the LGBTQ community. You've got Marin is bi, and then you have Fret and the Shroud creator. They're both lesbians. So it's really good representation
I think it was
to have.
Irie who created the
Yeah,
shroud. Yeah.
I think so. But so I think this is great representation. The other cool thing that I wanted to just bring up really quickly is Fret is a Kashiri, which the Kashiri, this is their first inclusion in canon media. And they were originally so they are a lavender skinned race, but they were the race that was on the planet that the Sith people crashed into. So the Sith in Legends were actually a people. They were a species and everything, and so they crashed on this planet and made the Kashiri like slaves in this instance. So those you can find in the Fate of the Jedi series, as well as Lost Tribe of the Sith for Legends. But obviously things have changed in how they're coming into canon media, so that's not going to be their history necessarily with canon media. But I thought it was a cool reference. I highlighted it because I was like, I've seen this before. Where have I seen this? Um, so yeah,
And
there's some really cool moments. I just wish that it flowed together a lot better.
and more so in the way that I had said that Sam really needed to just write a Cal Marin story. There's this looming thread throughout the book. Will they, won't they? Because Mirren is hot and horny for Fret the entire book, right? Like the moment they see each other, they're just like, I think at one point they're related to binary stars of like, hey, they are just meant to be together type of thing. But there's these moments where Marin is like, oh wait, Cal, I didn't think that was an option. Hold on, hold on. And there's these moments with Cal as well that it almost kind of like surprises him in a way, but he kind of thinks on it. He's like, oh, but I'm a Jedi and all of these other things. Relationships are hard, relationships are confusing, all of these different things. And like we've seen it like through all of Star Wars, like the whole no relationships thing with Jedi is bullshit. Like just like people need to forget about it. Although I know it's canon, there's like rules and all this stuff. Like rules are meant to be broken sometimes, guys. It's okay. It's okay. Like I
And
just well, go ahead, go
I
ahead.
think I think this serves as more of Marin is trying to find herself. I don't think this was a Cal Kestis book, even though a lot of us wanted it to be, or maybe it's just you and me. I don't know. I'm not going to speak for everybody. Um, but I think this was about Marin finding herself because she goes through basically at the beginning, she's lost her connection to her Dathomiri roots. She's having trouble with her powers. And then Fret comes in and Fret just like opens her up and like all of a sudden she has this massive amounts of power. She's like found herself. And even after the issues happen with Brett, Marin is still able to connect to that because she was able to say, okay, I can have connections to people other than my sisters. Um, so I think it was important for Marin, and I think it almost mirrors Sam Maggs's journey because like at the time this was announced, I think she was like in the middle of divorcing her husband because she had decided that she was lesbian, and which obviously good for her, but it kind of I think mirrors her own story, which is why she maybe wanted to tell this is finding yourself which is a good
Didn't
thing.
know
I
that.
think it's a great thing to have. Um, so I love that mirroring, but I just wish I really wanted like stakes for everybody else in the story.
Yeah.
I feel like Marin's story almost could have been like a comic that happened where she met somebody and then it's like a 5-issue comic like the Sarah story where she's a Padawan. I feel
Yeah.
like they could have done something very similar and accomplished something a whole lot greater.
Yeah. I agree with that. I think, and I think that they should kind of probably go into that. And as far as like, we haven't seen yet um uh mini comics like dive into the characters that we know from the game. Um,
Yeah.
so I think that would be a very smart move. Just to do a little bit more characterization of these characters, because there's only what I am learning more so in the more games that I play. Uh, there's a limit to what developers can do for the characterization, because there is a starting point and there is an ending point for that character from when you start the game and when you beat the game. Uh, and there's just sometimes we want more in-depth conversations. We want to learn more about these characters and we just can't. So I think that having these miniseries or maxi series or ongoing series for these characters would be kind of fun. And I totally agree with that. Um, is there anything else that you would wanna bring up, from the book at all?
I don't think so. I don't want to dwell on the fact that we didn't like I think we hit all the portions. Um y'all, this book is out March 7th if you're interested in it. Um go check it out because definitely still support if you're interested in it. I know I've got my book pre-ordered still because I'm a completionist and I can't help it. I gotta have it so it goes on the timeline. So but no, super grateful to Random House Worlds for sending this to us. I know this wasn't the most positive review, but we are always grateful for getting these ahead of schedule so that we can give you our opinions ahead of time.
Yes, I think that that is something that we for sure, need to have full disclosure on. We did receive this early, like I said in the beginning of this review. I think it's me and Katie have talked about this all the time. I think it's very important to say our opinion, and to let be fully transparent in the sense of, hey, we're not getting these books because we're just saying everything is absolutely awesome. There's plenty of Star Wars content that people can do that with. For us, I think it's very important to give our opinions on these books. We want to thank anyone and everybody within the publishing, the editing. Sam, you know, I loved you in the Unstoppable Wasp. That's what brought me here, and I think that's keep going, whatever direction you're going, because I think that even though this was a little bit of a snag, because of for me personally the restrictions I feel like there was with it being a video game almost universe. Um, I want to see more from Sam, and hopefully we can see more of that sooner rather than later.
Yes.
But
And just because these reviews are have kind of been at the top of my Twitter feeds. Minot Manor, Chris and Ryan had some really good reviews that I thought I agreed with some of their points and disagreed with others, but they're another perspective that you can go read those reviews and go check those out. Another very good one, I Adrian from But Why Though? He had a great review, and he really enjoyed it. So those are just some different perspectives to go check out. Um, and I'm not going to spoil the reviews for you, but like go check them out and definitely support smaller creatives as they get these reviews and stuff. So yeah,
All right. Well, you can always find me at fanboyclay on Twitter. Again, like I said in the main show, uh, you can find in the feed. Accidentally kind of destroyed my Mastodon, so I may need to create a new one there. But you can always follow my shows Ranger Alliance here on the network as well, and also that show off the network being Batman News Weekly. Katie, what about you?
Sorry, that came up on me. Y'all, you can find me on everything. It's at Slice of Katie. My personal website is sliceofkatie.com. If social media explodes, y'all know the drill with that. Um, this show you can find on Twitter, Instagram, all of social media. It's at Star Wars Alliance without the A in the war is very important. Don't forget it. That username is also our Gmail. You can reach us there. Star Wars Alliance without the A in the wars at gmail.com. You can also reach us at our hotline 830-538-4828. Leave us a voicemail, leave us a text, give us a little bit of information so we can give you a shout out. And if there's ever anything you'll want us to cover, again, as always, feel free to just let us know. We'd love to check it out. In the show earlier, David asked us if we could cover High Republic comics. I think Clay and I are in agreement. We're going to do that. So, yeah, y'all just reach out. We have a lot of fun answering listener questions, and we fail to ask on social media a lot. So, yes. My other show on the Geek Ultimate Alliance Podcast Network is Slice the Film One on Twitter. You can check out the latest episode. It was Indiana Jones Temple of Doom. Upcoming episodes Mission Impossible 3 and top movies in 2022. And I'm going to stop talking and let Clay do the closeout for this one because I'm about to cough again.
All right. Well, I will never do it as good as Katie, but of course, we thank you so much for. I'm just gonna stop trying to mimic Katie. I always try to do this, and I'm just gonna stop. I'm just gonna do my own. I can never be as good as Katie, and I just have to throw in the white flag for that. Well, anyway, thank you so much for lasting this long. Um, we will, of course, be back next week. By the time you're listening to this, remember that the Patreon live show is going to be coming out tomorrow. So we will be hanging out, talking about Ant-Man and the Wasp, some news topics, of course. So come join us for that. Anyway, thank you. And remember, may the force be with you.